Well, thank you for joining Political Talk with Charlotte today. I am so excited about today. It's a beautiful day in Memphis. Summer is trying to hold on, and I am not going to complain about that. I am your host, Charlotte Bergman. Our show airs every Thursday at noon, and there are different ways that you can get in contact with me if I say something that you don't like, or if I say something that you do like, you want to re-emphasize it, you can email me at charlotte@charlottebergman.com. You can go to both of my Facebook pages. One is Elect Bergman, and the other is charlotte.bergman.9. Then our show airs on Bitchute at Political Talk with Charlotte, on Twitter at Elect Bergman, on YouTube at Bergman for Congress. But you can go to YouTube and do a search on Charlotte Bergman, and many of my videos will show up. And then on Twitch.com, you can reach me at Charlotte Bergman. Now, if you're new to the channel, all I ask is that you leave a comment and, hey, just subscribe to my channel. That way you will be helping us to grow, mostly on YouTube and on Rumble. Guys, I do appreciate you. I appreciate your help. We are growing. We have about 10,000 listeners and viewers on Facebook. And if you missed the show live, you can always go back and pick up the show later. I love you. I appreciate you. Please comment on my videos, because what we are doing is bypassing and breaking that shadow banning that most social media sites try to impose upon Republicans, upon conservatives. And then check out my book, The Last Trumpet in the Battle for America. We are in a significant battle, but guess what, guys? We are winning, and we're going to win this battle. Now, just want to say something quick about the Memphis Safe Task Force. There has been some changes, guys. Since the start of the Memphis Safe Task Force on September the 29th, there have been 917 arrests. 917. I mean, these arrests are fluid. And tomorrow, I'm sure it's going to be even more. That's averaging about 57 arrests per day. And more than half of those arrests, actually, they were nonviolent arrests, including active warrants and ICE arrests. But these are people that are being taken off the streets. And you and I both can look outside and see that things appear to be safer in our communities. I'm happy about that. Now, I just wanted to break down these arrests. Okay. Nonviolent offenses, they've arrested 531 people. What these nonviolent offenses are, I don't quite know, but apparently it's having an impact. Violent offenses that include an attempted murder, there have been 7 people, and other infractions like traffic or probation violations. They've been coming after these people that are disobeying the law. And as a result, our community can be better. Thank you all for joining me. I hope that you guys are making comments, because this is going to be a great show. I do have with me Change, a friend of mine who has worked on Capitol Hill. She is a dynamic force that Memphis is going to have to contend with sooner rather than later. So let's bring on Change. Woo! Look at Miss Glamour Girl there. Hi, Change.
Good day to you, Charlotte. How are you today?
I'm well. We had technical problems earlier. There is a light glow behind you. We can barely see your face, but we are going to be united at the hip And so the next time you come on, we'll be able to see that beautiful face because
Thank you,
that
Charlotte.
face reflects the
Thank
power
you.
behind this lady.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Jane,
Yeah.
tell my audience about yourself because they can certainly hear you.
Well, I'm a native Memphian, and more than native, I like to say autochthonous, so that they know we sprang out of the land right here in Memphis, Tennessee, Orange Mound community, the ninth congressional district. Um, and as you mentioned, I went to go to Capitol Hill and serve time there. But before I went to Capitol Hill and met Uncle Sam, and I don't mean Uncle Sam, the tax man, my journey to Chicago allowed me to meet a man by the name of Sam Greenlee. You may or may not be familiar with him. He wrote a book back in 1973, I think, called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. He had had a prestigious Army career, worked with the Central Intelligence Agency, and had an opportunity to write about those experiences and things that he was exposed to. So, unbeknownst to my Uncle Sam, I affectionately call him, unbeknownst to him, when I arrived in Chicago, I was participating in a research project that my niece and I had begun. So long before I got to Capitol Hill to meet Uncle Sam, I was working. And that's why I decenter the Capitol Hill experience, because it is not the center of the thing. We worked to continue what Solomon Asch studies were about, and that was conformity. So we were little girls and we were documenting and gathering empirical data so that we could see how the community that we were in became the way it was and what we could do to reshape it. So even as little children, we had activist minds about things, and we didn't have a lot that we could do except to gather the data. But my journey took me on a very circuitous route to get me to Capitol Hill, and then that route ended, and I'm back home in Memphis. So sometimes you never know why you're experiencing or being exposed to a thing, and then it comes clear. So my meeting you kind of made clear how I took that circuitous route from Memphis to different places and ended up on Capitol Hill. So you can ask me any question you have about that experience. I'm fond of the time that I had prior to Capitol Hill and the times that I've had since then as much as Capitol Hill, just to be clear. Because Capitol Hill was another job, it was another opportunity to serve, but it definitely exposed me to things at a capital level.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, when you mention Capitol Hill, for those of you who may not know what she's referring to, what is Capitol Hill?
Capitol Hill is Washington, D.C.'s home for 435 U.S. representatives, 100 senators, and I was serving the Chicagoans in the second congressional district at the pleasure of Congressman or former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr.
Oh,
Yes,
you
sir.
were running with the big dogs.
I mean, that is how it's perceived from the outside in, and voters are do the best of the experience of voting. And that led me to create a voter education training center, because the impression of elected officials is sometimes far different from the actual person. So voters are I would say they're very, they need to be informed about more than just the personality of the representative. So yes, Jesse Jackson Jr. is in the shadow of his father, Jesse Jackson, who many people know if they don't know him as a son, and so he comes from a long line of notoriety.
Okay, and now how did you go about getting that job?
Okay, so that's the story. Like I said, before I got to Capitol Hill, I had no intention on serving in that capacity, but sometimes we adapt to what's in front of us. I was in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina and Rita happened. Hurricane Katrina was occurring. I had no idea. I was going there to, reassess things and figure out where I was going at the fork in the road. While I was in New Orleans, had some interesting encounters, and I spent about 2 years there helping with cleaning out some of the homes so that people could begin repatriating back. We cleaned out the hotel rooms. It was a very yeoman's task, a very large task to get rid of everything that those hurricanes did. Because if you remember, Hurricane Katrina came, and in the midst of the cleanup for Hurricane Katrina, there was an announcement that Hurricane Rita was on the way. So I was working with different volunteer organizations, Noah's Ark, which took care of animals that were lost in the storm. We would go out and we'd leave food and water, and we would make a mark, geo mark, take that back to the camp at the end of the night. And then the following day, someone else would go in and take care of the dogs. Because while I was in New Orleans, I had two Harlequin Great Danes of my own, which were not particular about letting other dogs come in. So I did the best I could do by going and taking food to the animals and leaving water and taking back the location of where they were so someone else could go and do the rescue. So we did that with the animals, and we went into homes for people. And after I finished doing the work in New Orleans proper, and they allowed us back into the city after Hurricane Rita had done spinning around, I went down to the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, and I worked in a different capacity. I cooked. They created a tent city for those residents that were out of their home, and they brought in a nice 18 wheeler that was fully stocked on the inside. You did not know you were not inside of a Michelin kitchen. So we were able to prepare fresh, hot food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the best part of it, Charlotte, was they created a really large dining tent. So after we had finished cooking and serving everyone to their fill, we would have the opportunity to go inside, and we could sit and pray and have conversation with the people. So I made some of the best relationships in that time, hearing those people's stories, being heard and seen by those people. And it was just a very great learning experience. It was impactful. And what I know in hindsight, it was a thing that prepared me for where I was headed. I'm from Memphis, again, in the congressional ninth district, the South Memphis, and New Orleans was the ninth ward, and um, near the French Quarters is where I worked. And then I went, like I said, down to Mississippi. So I've seen a variety of communities in need by the time I arrived on Capitol Hill. My initial assignment was as a personal assistant to the member, meaning I was a body person who accompanied him throughout his travels in the city. And then I was given the assignment to become director of community outreach, which I enjoyed. I felt like it was a gift to be paid to do what I saw necessary, what my parents and the elders that I was around right here in Memphis Ninth District did secondhand, was to look out for the community in any way that they could. One moment. They looked out for the community in any way that they could, and they provided meals, they provided housing when necessary, provided clothing. So the things that I had the opportunity to do as a director of community outreach came second nature to me. Although working at a federal level, they would always say, that's not something that we do. People would call the office for what they thought were mundane things. They needed water, or their heat wasn't working, air wasn't working. And the way I accepted it is, if they dial this number, I'm going to figure out something for them, even if it was only referring them to another agency. So everything that I did prior to coming to Capitol Hill prepared me for Capitol Hill and the community that I resided in, which was the second district, the south side of Chicago, which is now famous for being the home of former President Barack Obama's new library. And
And and that's what I was going to mention. Now, you worked in community outreach, correct?
yes, director of community outreach for the member. Yes,
Director of community outreach, and former President Barack Obama was a community organizer. So
yes,
you guys probably did some of the same things.
yes. We did a lot of the same things. The thing that when I first came to Chicago, you asked me if I could be specific. The way that I ended up on Capitol Hill was that stint that I spent in New Orleans. for 2 years. I traveled back to Memphis again, assessing where I was going to move at the fork in the road. And my aunt wanted to travel to Chicago to visit someone who was not well. No one was agreeable to take her because it was winter, it was cold, and I knew how important it was for her to visit. So I asked her if she would take a ride in the car with me and that I would go. That's how I ended up in Chicago in the middle of winter. And I had a friend that I went to visit once we arrived there, and she asked me if I would work with her on a campaign and do the media, do the videography, do photography, because she was working on a GOTV to get out the vote campaign. I agreed. Um, my mother agreed to look after the dogs that I left with her. I got my aunt back to Memphis. I traveled right back in the snow, and I started working, following the candidate, and that campaign was successful. She won the race. She was
Who was the candidate?
the candidate was Sandy Jackson, who is former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr.'s former wife. At the time,
Really?
he was running for an alderman seat in the 7th Ward of Chicago. And I did the media, like I said. And once it was done and she had won the campaign, I was there saying my goodbyes to everyone and, grateful for the relationships that I had made working on the campaign. And the congressman, Jesse Jackson, stopped me and he asked if I would consider staying and working on a transitional team because he said she had not been an elected official before and he could use the assistance with transitioning her from being a candidate to being an elected official. Once again, I called my mom. She was gracious again and she said, yes, I'll look after the dogs. So I stayed for maybe another month and worked on the transitional team, getting offices set up and things of that nature so that her day one would be successful for both her and the district that she was representing. It's a very important district that she was representing. It's on the south side of Chicago. It's lakefront property, and it was lakefront property that had not yet been developed the same as the north side of Chicago. Um, so it's very important property because whomever is the elected official, they kind of give other people access to that community. So it's important in that way. And sometimes the community is left out of important things. And again, that's my inspiration for voter education training so that going forward, people are informed, boots on the ground in the communities that they're in and the changes that are being made because I watch those changes change so many families' lives. When big development is coming in, sometimes small families are moved around. And I think it's appropriate that people are aware, even if they cannot stop the oncoming change or development. But it's appropriate, I think, to have families be aware. It's because, communities and traditions that come along with them are important to people. And those people are they're going to see a lot of development and change coming soon. The former site of U.S. Steel is where this area that she was becoming the alderman for is. They've begun work on that again now. So you'll hear some things about that, and some people will be happy and some will not. But development comes with that kind of, back and forth. So she won that seat. I worked on the transition team, and then I was saying goodbye again. And the congressman said to me he appreciated my work, and he asked me if I would stay and work uh, for his wife. I didn't agree to that, but I did some Southern girl negotiating, and then I said to him, if I stay, I will work on Capitol Hill. So that's how I got to Capitol Hill, the long story of it.
So
I
you know
worked
how to use leverage to get what you
I
want.
used the leverage. I wasn't interested in working in the in the alderman's office. I wanted to go to Capitol Hill so that the work that I'm talking about, the research that we did, it would just give me a broader perspective. The city office that she held as an alderman came under the purview of the federal office. So there's federal, there's state, and then there's city. So I knew if I worked in the federal office, I'd have a different vantage point of this city that I was coming into new. And as much as Chicago was new to me, the congressman was very impressed because they sent me out on some occasions alone. And if people are familiar with Chicago, there are communities that are south in the district that used to be the second district, and they're called the Wild Hundreds. There's the communities had a reputation for being a little active. So when they sent me there, unbeknownst to me, that was kind of a test of my wit and my skill. But when I came back from the night trip that they sent me, I was placing political signs on the lawns of homes. And when they when I came back after that, I came back with the truck empty. I had placed all the signs, but the truck was full of men and women that I met in that community because I knew better than to just come and barge into someone's community without talking and getting some understanding. And those people were very helpful to me. They were very hospitable to me. They really felt like home to me. And so instead of me getting run out of the Wild Hundreds, I came back to the office with friends from the Wild Hundreds. And those
So
friends,
it's a matter of working not hard but smart.
yes,
So
being smart.
you are very comfortable on Capitol Hill. Am I to understand that correctly? That you worked there for more than a year?
I'm comfortable on Capitol Hill. I was there. I worked in the district, except when the member called and asked me to come to Washington D.C.
Okay.
For work. But I typically worked in the district on the weekends because the member was in D.C. voting during the week, and then when he would come home on the weekend, there was still a responsibility to the constituents, to different meetings, different community development corporations, or different things that he had responsibility for in the district. So I would accompany him on those visits, and sometimes I would have to attend in his absence. They want the congressman, they want the member always, but that's not possible sometimes. So there were a lot of assignments that I was sent to spearhead and make sure that there was representation for the community as they requested.
So you served as a surrogate for the congressman when he was not able to
Correct.
attend various functions. In
Correct.
addition, you performed a function pretty comparable to what President Barack Obama performed prior to him becoming senator.
Correct.
President.
And because Congressman Jackson was served as the co-chair. He was a co-chair on then Senator Barack Obama's campaign. I had the opportunity to work on that campaign because if you're the body person, you go where the member goes. So I had that opportunity, and at the time that it was occurring, I was ecstatic. I thought it was um, a beautiful thing. Every thing about it, I guess it was identity politics to some point, but it just gave a different vigor. There was a different level of participation. And I'm not saying that it was all because he was Barack Obama in the skin that he's in, but people were just much more engaged in politics at that level. And I remember vividly the night that he did the acceptance speech, standing out. It was cold and about, and I was so tired from all the work that went into making that, nomination and that campaign possible. But it was just, it felt surreal being there and seeing a community so invigorated, even if they didn't have the highest understanding of all the politics. They were just engaged, and it felt like good America because
Good.
people were participating and they were
Good.
excited about the outcome.
Now, when I met you in Memphis, I was told that a friend of mine met you because you were walking around with a Make America Great hat on, that you had boldly decided to do what you felt best, comfortable with. And may I ask, are you a supporter of the Make America Great Again philosophy?
Well, actually, um, that day happened. I was out at Azure picking up some products, ordering some food, and picking up on a truck. And the man passed by me. I didn't know him, and he kept staring at me And finally, he said to me, "I like your T-shirt." It was a
Oh,
T-shirt
it
that
was a T-shirt. Okay,
yeah,
I'm
it
sorry.
was a T-shirt that I had someone else make, and it was a play on MAGA. MAGA means magic, if people don't know, but that's what MAGA means. But I'd done a play on that because I met so many people who were very upset about the MAGA movement, um, so upset with President Trump that they weren't not going to say the name. They were calling him orange. And I just wanted to use that momentum to engage people. And it worked with this man, Mr. Settles, that I met, because the T-shirt was the draw. But the T-shirt said, he saw MAGA, but the T-shirt said, making the autochthonous great again. And when I'm saying this, um, I I wanted to play on that because I see myself as a Tennessean. My family's from Rossville, Tennessee, and I grew up born in Orange Mound and living in Bethel Grove. I still, live in the house that I grew up as a child. So again, community outreach or activism is very personal to me. But being an autochthonous Tennessean, I wanted to say we're making that great again. Who we are, where we come from, where we spring up from. So, because MAGA is on the brains of many people, I'm sure he only saw making America great again. But I played on the concept of MAGA because, again, MAGA's magic. And it
Okay,
worked for him. It created a conversation that led me to you. And initially, his conversation was asking me, because I had such a different political perspective, in his opinion, did I have any interest in being in politics? So that's how the
well,
conversation began that led me to you.
I've spoken to you, and you share a lot of my conservative values, irrespective of whether there was a play on MAGA or not. But last question that I have for you, since you
Yes.
spent so much time in Chicago, and currently, I think while you were in the back room, I was talking about the number of arrests which has occurred in Memphis since the beginning of the Memphis Safe Task Force. There have been
Yes.
quite a number of people who have been apprehended, who have been taken off the street. What we have to our advantage is we have great people in the state of Tennessee who actually got out and voted their values. So they voted for a Republican governor, irrespective of whether people think he is the MAGA Republican or not. He is a Republican governor. He has, in turn, spoken to and convinced the Democrat mayor in Memphis to work with him, to work with the National Guard, to work with the task force that was sent to Memphis. And we are having great results. But Chicago is just the opposite. They have a Democrat governor, a Democrat mayor, and they have all chaos in the streets of Chicago. And it is getting dangerous and it is getting even worse. My question to you is, how do you feel about what's happening in Chicago?
I think that what's happening in Chicago is necessary. And again, the people who are on the ground may not have been engaged in what's happening in their city prior to this coming, but were they engaged, they would know it was going towards this directive where this would have to happen. There was a story about a building in Chicago that trended very high, went viral, talking about them arresting people from Venezuela in a building on the south side of Chicago across from Adam Clayton Powell Elementary School. Some people are presenting the story as if there were maybe 150, the building houses maybe 150 people. Some people were presenting the story as if there were Black people in those buildings that were being taken out, when the primary community at the point of ICE entering were people from Venezuela. So a building had been reputed for housing more elderly Black people. They were still living, able to be near the South Lake Shore. It was a very nice lifestyle for them. And somewhere in between the time that I left in 2013 and the time that ISIS arrived, Chicago used its sanctuary city blanket, and those changes occurred. So the sanctuary city concept is good for people who want to be protected at the expense of taxpayers, but it's not good for the people who are the taxpayers. And that's what's happening in Chicago right now. When I worked there, again, I only served the member. I didn't make decisions, I didn't make the legislation, but the DREAM Act, if anyone remembers that, the DREAM Act is the predecessor to what is happening right now with the government shutdown. The DREAM Act was for people who were alien minors, development relief and education for alien minors. So right now, what they're saying the Democrats are using to hold up the Congress and keeping it shut down is asking for $1.5 trillion. The common denominator is people are purported to represent a community of people, not based on race, but based on boundary lines that they've drawn. And what happens often, because voters are not engaged prior to the problem appearing, is those people can veer off from the primary persons or the primary representation. And that's why it's important for voters to be educated, to be trained, and to remain engaged. The DREAM Act was the precursor to this. So, having seen the perspective from the federal level, I could see what was going to come, not just to Chicago, but any sanctuary city. Because being sanctuary means they provided cover for people that are not a full citizen, they're not native to the land. So I don't say illegal, everybody has a right to be alive. Run a nation based on boundaries and borders. So what Chicago is seeing is just a pattern of what any city that has to remove people who have been provided this temporary sanctuary. And it was obviously temporary because when a new administration comes in at the presidential level, he makes those changes, and then there is no sanctuary for them. So, wanting to change the voter base was the big drive for a lot of people being a sanctuary city. And that has caused problems for those people from Venezuela or wherever they were from. There are people from many places that are not from here that got in line ahead of people who were due representation. Taxation without representation is why the Boston Tea Party happened. And when you allow millions of people on the rolls ahead of other people who are in need, are in some of the very same need, that that can be seen as taxation without representation. So what's happening in Chicago seems violent, or it seems it's upsetting for people. And I say this: if the voters knew, if they were aware and educated by those people who purport to represent them, we wouldn't be seeing this kind of anger in 2025, because they would have already said to the representative, we don't want this for our community.
And they have been saying this. And let me just go over this chart that I have put up there. This is in reference to the shutdown that we are experiencing now. The Democrats want $1.5 trillion. That's what they're demanding in order to open the government again, which includes $200 billion in health care benefits for illegal aliens. I say illegal, but everybody have a right to say what they want. They want to they want to repeal $50 billion toward, which has been taken away from rural hospital funds. Repeal of the $50 billion rural hospital fund. I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly initially. They want permanent COVID subsidies without reforms. Without reforms. They want $500 million for liberal news outlets. They want $1 billion for global LGBTQ plus awareness campaigns. They want $4 billion for LGBTQ plus democracy grants in the Balkans, not in the United States, but in the Balkans. They want $2 million for feminist democratic principles in Africa. This is what is happening now, and this is why our government is shut down now. So
Mhm.
anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because
Yeah,
a lot of people
and
probably
what
don't know.
you're saying is, I'm saying the same thing about the Dream Act. This is akin. This is just another phase of that same of courting that same demographic of people. The Dream Act courted those people. There are children in America who wanted an access, had a dream, as Martin said, about going to school and furthering their education and all of that. But they were not in the loop for the Dream Act. They didn't qualify for that. But more than $26 billion went to afford that for them. So the $1.5 trillion ask that they keep volleying from side to side, wanting to call it a Schumer shutdown, wanting to call it a Republican shutdown. They're volleying back and forth. But what you never hear anyone say is the clear facts. And so someone denies it just based on terminology. I know you said people can say whatever they want to say, but the bill reads this way. It says the 1.5 trillion funding package, it includes provisions expanding health coverage, Medicaid reimbursement, subsidy eligibility would, by design, provide benefits to groups who are not full U.S. citizens. And it gives an example: people who are lawful permanent residents, people who are parolees, certain non citizens lawfully present in the United States, and in some proposals, unauthorized immigrants.
Okay,
And
okay.
one of the aspects that I handled while I was on Capitol Hill was immigration. So I see this as clear as, again, they're chosen a different demographic other than the demographic that voted them into the office to court and to take care of. And just based on prioritization, that's a problem.
Well, there are people in the United States who feel like they want their tax money to go to take care of people who are Americans first. I'm a strong supporter of people who were not born in the United States, but I want them to be able to exercise their right to come here in the United States the right way. There is a right way to come into the United States. And part of that right way is to go through the process to become Americans. So anyway, change. I want to thank you.
Thank
I've
you.
gone past where I want us to be in order. I typically don't do long shows, but
Okay,
I want you to come back and we can talk further. And
I'll be glad.
thank you. Thank you so much. So
Thank you, Charlotte, and have a great day.
I shall, and you do likewise, and I appreciate you. You guys, she's doing this show. She's got a boot on her leg because she has an injury. So she has positioned herself to be on the show in a place where it is not necessarily advantageous for you to be able to see her clearly, but it is a place that is comfortable for her with the
Yeah,
limitations that she has on her foot.
yeah.
So the next
Thank
time
you
she,
for
well,
understanding.
the next time she comes on the show, we're going to have a better background or a different background. So God bless you all. Thank you, Change. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Bye bye now.
Bye bye now.
Okay, guys, that was Change, and I appreciate you guys listening to her. I One other topic I want to discuss is what the breaking news, which has just come out. Breaking news, guys. Were you aware that it has come to our attention? It has come to our attention that Mike Pence, the former vice president, he's a crook. He has been implicated in the DOJ's investigation of former National Security Advisor John Bolton. John Bolton related to Pence's framing of General Flynn. You guys remember that. Pence actually started the ball rolling in framing General Flynn. Pence's illegal possession of classified documents and his role in January 6th is now coming to surface. Bolton recently described Pence as a consistent ally during President Trump's first term. Pence, you should be ashamed of yourself. Pence is reportedly also being probed for unlawful leaks. He's been probed for unlawful leaks. He's dirty. These leaks included sensitive national security matters from the Trump White House to the leftist media. Pence and Bolton are said to be facing indictments by a federal grand jury for a litany of federal crimes. They are the very definition of the enemy from within. All I can say is, may justice be swift and fierce for these traitors. Yes, I want justice to be swift and fierce for those traitors. I want them to they screw up things, and I want them to get their just desserts. And we will bring justice back to the United States and to our government. So you guys be blessed. Have a blessed week. I've enjoyed being with you guys. And at least Chance was able to get on the show without the problems that we encountered with my last guest. And hopefully he will get his sound, his Wi-Fi worked out so that he will be able to come back on the show. Okay? All righty. We've got some Pence. Ooh, I'm not going to say that, Cindy. Karen, thank you for joining the show today. George, thank you for joining the show today. You guys be blessed. Have a great week. And I will talk to you guys soon.